Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic for you today, a really good one. I like this. So let's do it. What's something you truly regret? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe.
I allowed my buddy in school to perform a wrestling move on me. He lost his footing while he had me on his back and I fell, teeth first, on the ground. My right front tooth shattered 1/4. The pain lasted for a week and also lost my chance at getting braces. A few years ago, some friends and I went to a comedy show at a big theater. As we left, we made our way to the parkade and we were joined in the elevator by a dude who was just beaming. I mean, ear-to-ear smile. A little spring in his step, the works. As we ride to the top floor, he looks around and spits out, "Damn, what a show, eh?" For some reason, I didn't say anything. I looked at my friends, and it seemed they were straight up ignoring him. And as I thought of something to say, the moment passed, and I couldn't bring myself to break the silence. When no one piped up, this guy's whole demeanor changed. He slowly slouched. The gleam faded from his eye. That smile slipped right off, and he didn't look up from the floor once. He went from looking like king of the world to the most defeated, sad man I've ever seen. I'm not normally that guy who doesn't know what to say or who ignores strangers, but for some reason it broke that dude. Turns out my friends just didn't hear him. That transformation still haunts me. Bro, if you're out there, yes, show was the shit. Being a hermit and avoiding people, I've recently started trying to be more social, and I'm not. Quickly learning that I enjoy interacting with others. Getting married at 19 and 95, not really discovering who I was as a person. Thinking then, wow, someone loves me. That won't happen again, better not let that go. Having such low self-esteem to put up with 17 years of shit. I do have 2 great kids from it though. Meeting my ex-wife on the internet one summer, then driving non-stop from Northern Ontario to Wyoming to marry her all within 2 months. When I was 15, I tried to kill myself. Apparently, I was yelling at my mother in the back of the ambulance, telling her she should have let me die. I don't remember it, but I wish it never happened. I was in the Virgin Islands with my wife. She saw a bracelet that she really liked. I had the money and I didn't buy it. That was 21 years ago back, and it still bothers me. I guess I need to take her back there and get it. Not accepting that some disabilities come with natural limitations and that figuring out how to work around them is key, rather than boneheadedly insisting there is no limitation until you're forced to concede. Only now you're in a situation with no accommodations and no workarounds or treatment, or personally or professionally, for your limitations. I called my buddy one night because I knew he was having a tough time. I told him I'm coming over. He kept saying, "No, I'm good. He was less than a mile away. I said, okay. And then his mom called me in the morning saying he was dead. And what did he say to me in the phone call? Oof. Not seeing my grandfather before he died. I was 17 and very much in the puppy love stage of my first relationship and convinced she was the one. Got the news that my grandfather had bowel cancer. He was an amazing man. Despite not having much, he always used to try and make things special for us growing up. He'd appear at 7 a.m. every Christmas morning dressed as Santa, magic sweets behind cushions in the sitting room. He was a typical grumpy granddad, but underneath that, he had a heart of gold. Instead of visiting him, I spent time with her. I had multiple opportunities, countless times I could have gone and seen him, and I turned those away, believing there was always another time. There wasn't. He died before I realized what I'd done. I hope he knew just how much I loved him. He meant everything to me, and I didn't even give him the courtesy of saying goodbye. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Not working hard enough through school. I always did just enough. I got by with average grades, never pushed myself to work harder to get the top grades, which I see now I was fully capable of. I just needed to apply myself and work a bit harder. Now I'm at uni, though quite a bit of luck because my A-levels were horrific, and I'm determined to turn it around and make something of the chance I've now got. I didn't take college seriously. I was just going through the motions and never graduated. Now all my closest friends have their careers and are making a good living while I'm stuck in mediocrity. I never thought about the future back then, and it hurts me big time. I'm 1,000 steps behind everyone else. Take one. This was many years ago when I was a little kid on a holiday with my parents. We went camping, and being the social kid I was, I made friends quickly. We connected through our Game Boys and tried out all the games we had. He borrowed his cartridge of Pokemon trading card game, so I could play at my own tent. I loved it. When it was time for us to go back home again, I totally forgot it was still in my Game Boy. I said goodbye, got in the car, and fell asleep since it was a long drive to my hometown. When we got back, I obviously grabbed my Game Boy again, only to notice I accidentally left his charger cartridge in it. I felt so bad. I was scared he thought I'd stolen it from him since he knew I liked the game so much. Being scared my mother would be angry, I never explained the situation. I hid the game and never played it again. To this day I'm extremely aware of my stuff, especially when I have used other people's things. It's such a silly little thing, but I absolutely still regret it many years later. I missed the last Christmas I had with my grandma to spend it with one of my now ex-boyfriends who would have otherwise been alone for Christmas. I didn't know at the time it would be our last Christmas with her. We video called, but that isn't quite the same. He broke up with me after I spent a weekend looking after his cat while he was on a work trip. After how he treated me toward the end of the relationship, I realized he really wasn't worth missing out on family time for. I'll probably regret this for the rest of my life. I miss you, Grandma. I really regret the amount of drinking I did in my 20s and 30s. While I've been sober for over 2 years and don't plan on ever being intoxicated again, I will never get past the guilt and shame I feel for putting myself and my family through god-awful times and events when I was regularly drinking myself into a coma. Acting on my depression. If I knew I'd be here today, I never would have done what I did. Clarification. I attempted to end my life, which I obviously didn't succeed. I regret ever doing that in the first place. I'm happy to be alive. I do not regret falling at the attempt. Rather, I'm glad it did. Some people thought I regretted that I failed, and I still want to die, which is not true. My younger sister and I got into a massive fight when I was 20, she 19, a really big verbal one. We went back and forth for hours, calling each other names that would make sailors blush. Eventually, she called me some choice words pertaining to the fact that I was 20, a father and living at home with mom and dad. This really pissed me off as she knew the circumstances that led to the situation, so I called her something hurtful, something that I do not feel comfortable repeating. Her face went from one of absolute anger to just heartbreak, I suppose. She stormed off crying. I was that angry that I just left without her thought to her feelings. Well, that put a strain on our relationship for the next 7 years. Neither of us were in the same room for more than an hour at most. When we were, it was like a bomb was sitting in the room and one word could trigger it. What I did know, in fact, none of our family knew beyond her, was that she was going through some mental issues at the time, and I made them worse. I moved out not long after that, and we didn't really speak for years. Eventually we did bury the hatchet. I did apologize and try to make it right, but it still weighs on my heart that I did what I did that day. It almost ruined my relationship with my sister, and from her mental state at the time, she could have killed herself, if not for our younger sister. In community college, a sociology professor asked us to raise our hands and say what religion we are, voluntary of course. This was to get an idea of how diverse the class was. Everyone went around and said the typical Christian, Catholic, Muslim, etc., and that was that. The professor then asked, "Are there any others?" So I raised my hand. I don't really identify with a certain religion. I was raised Christian, but I'm more of a evolution, Big Bang, science type of believer. I explain this to the entire class, and the professor asks if there's a name for it. I say, Scientology? He just kind of smiled and said, "Great," before moving on. Then I learned what Scientology is. Then I learned I'm probably agnostic. This experience had no repercussions other than the fact it still makes me cringe, knowing people thought I was a Scientologist. This was about a decade ago. My older brother was graduating high school. We were in the car, ready to go, and being an angsty teen, I wanted to go hang out with my boyfriend instead. My brother had some learning disabilities and in reality shouldn't have graduated, but he did, and it was a big deal for my mom and everyone else. My mom was a high school dropout and always pushed us to graduate, which we did. I threw such a fit, she ended up dropping me off at my boyfriend's house on the way to the ceremony. My brother died very unexpectedly 2 years after that. I never got the chance to apologize for being so selfish, and that it is my one true regret in life. I always meant to, but it's hard admitting you wronged someone you loved and chose not to stand there in support of them when they needed it. Graduating ended up being his last big accomplishment, and I missed it to hang out with my shitty boyfriend. I could not comfort my dying grandfather in hospital. I could not touch him, could not tell him what he meant to me. I visited him, looked at him, stood at his side, but was a horrible company for an old man. He was in a coma at this point, but my mother strongly believed that he was hearing and feeling some things. She did a great job. I did not. He was like a stranger to me when I first entered the room, even though I loved him greatly. There was only fear in these moments. I regret not kissing her again before she got on that plane. Had I known she wasn't coming back, I would have asked her to wait with me a bit longer. No, she didn't pass away. She went to boot camp and fell in love with someone else. We had plans to keep things going long distance. We'd even started discussing marriage seriously, but she said I wasn't there for her and that he was. My other regret is not letting go. She wasn't just a lover. She was my best friend and sometimes only friend. But she's moved on and so should I at this point. I'm sure it's cringy for my friends or family to see me like this, but I still miss her every time I wake up and go to sleep. I think of her just about every day, at least once. She's moved on from the guy she fell in love with and has since started dating someone else. I've been with others physically since she left, but romantically, I feel nothing anymore. She may come home for Christmas, or maybe I'll see her then. I'm leaning toward no, though. She probably doesn't want to see me. When I think of what happened, I feel so defeated and pathetic. A lot of times I wonder if I'll ever stop missing her. I know part of me will always care. On January 3rd, it will be the 7th anniversary of a friend of mine passing away. We were both home from university for Christmas break. Z went to school about an hour further up the highway from my school. She Facebook messaged me on December 27th, told me to swing by her place for New Year's party. I was busy, so I never got around to responding. I got a phone call at 2 a.m. on January 4th from a mutual friend. Z and 3 friends had been driving back to school when the driver hit a patch of black ice on a turn, crossed the center line, and smoked a Jeep. Z and K were killed instantly, mangled beyond all recognition apparently. The driver H held on in intensive care in a coma for a few more days, but never woke up. E was asleep when the car happened, and walked away with a chipped tooth. She dropped out of our friend circle, disappeared from social media, dropped out of school, and haven't seen her in nearly 6 years. I have no idea where she is or what she is doing. I Google her name every now and then to see if I can find something, but nothing ever comes back. One of my biggest regrets is not responding to that Facebook message. My father grew up in Korea. He immigrated with his family to the US when he was 15 years old. To this day, I think that may have been one of the hardest things in his life that he had to do. But to be honest, as such as my dad struggled in his life, I don't think it compares to my grandfather. My grandfather was born in the early 1930s. He was born into a poor Korean family in the middle of repairing a cultural devastated by years of occupation. When he was 18 years old, he was conscripted into the South Korean army to fight in the Korean War. He was assigned to a group called the White Skulls, officially the 3rd Infantry Division of the Republic of Korea Army. This infantry division saw some of the most heavy casualties in the Korean War, as far as I remember. When I was a kid, I would talk to my grandpa, and he would show me his scars, bullet scars in his upper arm and chest. He told me only once that his unit was one of the highest numbers of casualties. Out of the 20 people that he served with as a unit, I don't actually know the military hierarchy structure at the time. These are his words, and we couldn't communicate fully, as I didn't know Korean very well, and he spoke very little English. Only 2 survived the war without injury. A little backstory that a lot of people don't know is that the Korean War is commonly known as the Forgotten War. In between 2 major conflicts, World War II and the Vietnam War. The war lasting 2 years before the armistice is not as memorable to the general population in comparison, but it has always been very important to my family. After losing 2 brothers in the war, my grandfather went on to marry my grandmother. They had 3 sons, my father being the oldest. My grandfather worked every day doing shoe repair and shining. On Saturdays, after studying, my father would go help him. Shoe goddamn repair and shining. My father's family lived out of a small house paying a landlord, and my grandfather would spend hours and hours every day to make money for them, to live, and for my father and my uncles to go to school. Shoe repair and shining. Like I said, they moved to the US when my father was 15 years old, 1975. My dad went to Texas A&M, barely knowing English. My uncles, being a bit younger, acclimated more successfully and eventually went to Texas A&M and Duke, respectively. My grandfather, however, never learned English well enough to converse. My earliest memories are of him hunched over in a teal windbreaker doing yard work. I'm the youngest of 3, and I would play with him and try to help him with yard work, never actually doing work, but laughing with him and spending time with him. I never was fully conversational in Korean, so our conversations would be a combination of gestures, broken English from him, and terrible Korean from me. There were so many barriers to keep us from understanding each other, yet that man picked me up without fail from practice every Tuesday and Thursday, and we'd go to a little Korean restaurant and order the same thing, a little corner shop where the owner knew us, and would always give us extra food, and we'd spend hours together, my grandfather and I laughing and eating. He's the strongest man I ever met. My grandfather passed away from cancer in 2011. I was there when they pulled the plug. I was there to hold his hand and watch the life pass from his eyes. And I'll always regret the fact that I never had a conversation where I could tell him just how goddamn much that he meant to me. I never learned Korean even when pushed by my parents. I never spoke more than a few words to him to explain. To this day, I wear his dog tags to remember him, his sacrifice, his love, and his care. And I couldn't bring myself to learn Korean just to talk with him. I miss him so goddamn much, and I hate the fact that I could never tell him in a language that he would understand just how much he meant to me. God damn it.
Hey guys, we'll get back to some more shoutouts tomorrow, but I really wanted to touch on this topic specifically. It doesn't matter, like a lot of the commenters are saying, or the story people are saying that, I know mine will seem insignificant. It's not. Like, it to you, it's a huge regret. So something that may seem trivial, if it affected your life in that way, then it didn't. Like, some of these stories got me pretty emotional because you start thinking of things that you regret. And this one in particular, the Korean grandfather, that was powerful to me. The last time I saw my father alive was my 27th birthday, on my birthday. We had dinner like we did, and I went home, and he died a week later. If I would have known, right? You stay a little longer. You hug him longer. Just went through the motions. So I don't regret it because, it was what we always did. Hindsight's always going to be 20/20, and these stories are a lesson and exercise in that. As best we can, you could just try to really be in the moment. I'm just as guilty sometimes when I'm with my kids or my mother, and you're kind of like thinking of what you're doing ahead tomorrow, or thinking about the next movie you're going to watch, or reel, or work responsibility. I promise that I will be more present, and these stories were a catalyst for that. Even though I've said it and I do it, and I've gotten much better at it, but I guess that's going to be one of my resolutions. So yeah, I don't know, just something from a guy on a screen thousands of miles away.
I trusted my grandma too much, thinking she had my best interests at heart. Everything I did was for her approval, and that was the way that she was, or she'd get angry at me and I'd accept it. Not only did it keep me living a lie in the closet for much longer, it made me go to college so freaking bad, until I failed out since it pushed me into the one she wanted me to go to instead of me even getting the chance to check out the school and degrees I specifically wanted. I say this one is the biggest because never finishing college or being able to afford to go back feels like what's held me back career-wise to this day. I did, however, finally come out at 27, 5 years after college flopping, and have been much happier with life in general. She still doesn't approve of it, but I don't give a f***, because my life is my life and my happiness, and I realize that it's too late, you know? Oh well. 30s are going to be amazing, or so I keep telling myself, as I get closer to them. LOL. I'd left my boyfriend at about 1 month in. I was upset, and over something. Can't remember what now, but as I was sitting down, he leaned over to my level and said to me, "If you're gonna sit and cry all day, why are you here?" So I left. He got hella upset and came apologizing, and I believed him. My life would have been so very, very different if I just stayed away. I really wish I could go back and change that moment, but still, it got me to where I am now, and I'm very happy. It just could have saved a lot of sadness. This probably was very small compared to what everyone else will say, but it's still something that weighs very heavily on me. I was bullied really badly in primary school, so when I went to high school, I wanted it to be a brand new beginning. However, it didn't make any friends in the first day. So on the second day, a teacher paired me with another kid who didn't have any friends and had a significant intellectual disability. I knew that if I hung around with her, I wouldn't make any friends and that I would be bullied. So I ate lunch with her a couple of times, but for the most part, I did my absolute best to avoid her. I never said anything bad to her, but I never stopped anyone from being mean to her either. It wasn't until she had to leave the school because it had gotten so bad that I realized I had contributed to the situation. Like I said at the beginning, this is probably nothing compared to the other comments in this thread, but it really changed my worldview and the consequences of remaining silent when something unique and unjust happens. When I was around 10 to 11, my brand new bike got stolen. It sucked because at the time, the cool thing to do was ride bikes around the neighborhood with friends, and since I had no bike, my stepdad got me a used bike. Kind of beat up, but still worked fine and surprised me with it. Shallow, ungrateful me looked at the bike and reacted with utter disgust. What am I supposed to do with this piece of crap? It's older than I am. Yeah, dude. Thanks, but no thanks. Later that day, my mom came to me and really let me have it. Turns out my stepdad was really excited about doing something nice for me and hated not being able to get me a new bike, but figured this would be good until the better bike was feasible. I felt awful, cried and cried that I could be so rude and unappreciative because the thing wasn't brand new and shiny like I felt I deserved. As soon as I could, I found him and apologized and thanked him for what he'd done. I rode that bike till the wheels fell off. It was actually better than my stolen bike. That was 20-ish years ago, and every now and then I remember it and just feel like shit. I've never regretted my actions more in my life. It taught me so many life lessons, though. Long story short, I was an absolute asshole and lost contact with my big Midwest family for 25 years. I wanted to get back to them, but the time just was never right. Anyhow, events led to us finally speaking again, but it was too late to have any final words with my dad. Oof. I missed the chance by 2 days. 2 days earlier, out of 25 years, I could have told him that I loved him or that I was okay or something, but no words. Happy ending. That was 9 years ago. It still hurts me, but in this time since, I've gotten back to being a full-fledged family member. I see my mom and my 5 other siblings at least every month. I love them, and strangely, they love me. I was in my 11th grade standard form whatever. I was one of those popular students who was loved by pretty much the entire educational institution. Good in academics, head student, loved by all the teachers, even the ones who did not teach me, except maybe 1 or 2. Sure, I was a bit on the heavier side, but nobody cared since I was a professional MC who was always hosting events in our institution for free. Stuff like dances, cultural events, holiday celebrations, and whatnot, and I had a reputation for being a funny comedian. One day the principal and I got into a huge disagreement over something, long story for another time, and my parents and I were under the impression that he handled it horribly. I still am salty about it, and feel he handled it horribly 4 or 5 years later, but that is beside the point. So, a couple of days after the principal and I have our huge public argument, he comes into my classroom to inform me that we are holding a concert organized by a local charitable organization for disabled students. We would have singers, musicians, or dancers who were either blind, deaf, dumb, and so forth. In front of the whole class, I basically just looked him in the eye and said, "Cool." So he proceeded to carry on talking, and he started mentioning some things he wanted me to do while I was hosting the event. I interrupted him and said that I had no interest in hosting, and he should find someone else. He got upset, called me immature, and left the classroom. A week later, the day of the event is there. Apparently, some guy from the charitable institution itself was hosting the event. He was not doing a very good job. He kept fumbling and stuttering. He was nervous and boring. His attempts at humor were met with genuine uncomfortable spans of silence from the audience. He would react to this silence by repeating his jokes again, as if to say they were funny, and the only explanation for us not laughing is because we didn't hear it properly the first time. Awkward and cringeworthy. Anyway, at some point there was this blind girl about my age up on the stage singing a song. She was accompanied by a couple of blind musicians playing instruments. I think there was a violinist and a pianist. Amazing performance. I genuinely thought they were professional musicians who spent their entire lives dedicated to music. After their performance, the MC announced that the event had ended, and he wanted a student from the audience to come up on stage and deliver a vote of thanks. Awkward silence in the audience. 20 seconds later, he repeats himself. He wants one student from the audience to deliver the vote of thanks. Principal, who's sitting in the audience, gets up and walks over to me and asks me to do it. Again, I was incredibly upset with him, so I literally turned my head in the opposite direction and pretended like I could not see him, even though he was standing right in front of me. Laughter from the audience as they saw this, and a couple of my friends were clapping, which further encouraged my childish antics. Eventually, the principal just goes around asking different students to do it. Nobody is willing to. All the students in my batch were really shy. And at this point, the entire vote of thanks fiasco has gone on for about 3 to 4 minutes. Eventually, the principal gives up, goes on stage, and delivers the vote of thanks himself, and verbally berates all the students present for being such ungrateful people. Then the MC takes the microphone and proceeds to tell us how we should not be shy, and how we should thank those around us who give the chance. Then there was me in the audience when the principal started speaking. I was grinning from ear to ear as I felt I had won somehow. Suddenly I realized the blind singer on stage started wiping her face and sobbing, and it dawned on me that I was an idiot. As she was escorted off the stage and down the aisle, I was sitting right near the center and sort of walked right past me, and I could hear one of the volunteers comforting her and reassuring her that she sang very well, and that the audience was just shy. Did not sleep that night, nor the nights that followed, too wrecked with guilt. Yep, years later, I still feel like a huge idiot. If I could, I would go back in time and slap myself right there in the hall, and tell myself to quit being a petty, immature idiot. One night when I was 17, my brother stopped by my dad's house to see if I was home. I'm not sure what he wanted, but my dad wasn't there, so he went to continue with his night. On his way out, he said, "I love you," down the stairs to the basement where I was hanging out with my friends. I didn't say it back. I was 17 and thought I was too cool to say something like that in front of them. He died of a drug overdose that night. I think about that moment every day of my life, and I wonder if things would have turned out differently if I wasn't being a shitty teenage girl. When I was a late teen, I was a fucking mess. I was so wrapped up in my own issues or head that I would lash out at my parents. One time I freaked out on them and started screaming. I could give reasons, but seriously, why bother? I fucked up. And my mother grabbed me and tried to hold on to me to protect and restrain and calm me. I reacted by biting her in the arm. Almost 30 years later, and I'm still so ashamed. On the plus side, I took a good hard-long look at myself, coupled with a particularly hellish, outward-bound 3-week trip, and am still always aware that I have the potential to be violent. My parents have continued to be unequivocally supportive. I was blessed with the kind of parents I probably didn't deserve, but I've tried since then to make sure that I do. I was starting a summer job where we all live on property in an employee housing. I was broke before starting this season, and I only had 2 pairs of black work pants and one was ripped. It had a small tear in the crotch. I decided to keep it and wear it because I needed to wear something other than the same pair of pants. Second day, I'm sitting down with my legs out in front of me when a coworker I'm talking to makes a face at me and turns away. I look down, and that tear had gotten a little bit bigger and my fucking nuts were hanging out. Needless to say, I threw those away and got some new ones. I had severe heartburn for over a decade, started when I was 15. Doctors said it was GERD, gave me tablets to help and said that's all he could do. The pain was unbearable. If I had a bad bout, I could stay in bed for days. My quality of life was awful at times and it contributed to depression. I was also worried about the side effects from taking this medication too, as it can cause cancer when used long-term amongst other things. I asked my doctor repeatedly if it could be anything else, and he assured me it wasn't. When I was 28, I became really lethargic all the time and constantly felt sick. One day there was a lot of blood in my stool. I felt fine though, like I wasn't in pain. Went to a walk-in for an opinion and ended up in the hospital for a week. Turns out I had H. pylori bacteria in my stomach and it didn't agree with me. It had caused all my symptoms for years and had now culminated in me having multiple ulcers. It had tipped all my stomach lining to shreds and caused my gut to stop absorbing B12, which resulted in me being so tired. I had also started losing pints of blood when the floodgates finally burst, to pardon a phrase. I was put in a course of antibiotics and haven't had any trouble since in 2.5 years. No pain. It would have taken my doctor a minute to test me for something that half the world's population has. I regret not going with my gut, ignore the pun, and getting a second opinion. I was always taught that the doctor knew best and to respect that, which I did, to the point that I was in agony for years and almost died from it.